God said something to me. It's like He spoke to me so clearly. I heard Him word for word. And He said, Alex, would you rather have an easier road with less fruit or a harder road with more fruit? And I was so stunned at that. I turned to my wife and I said, God just asked me a question. And she said, what? And I said, God just asked me a question. And she said, well, what did you say? And I said, well, I don't know. I didn't answer. As a boy, for years we didn't have a television. Our parents were pretty conservative, loved the Lord and wanted to, rightly protect us. We were able to see on occasion a movie, a family-friendly movie at the theater. And I remember being so enamored with these huge stories on screen. The Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Star Wars movies. And somewhere around the age of 9 or 10, I remember thinking, I must do this. Most of the stories that I made as a kid with our home video camera were chasing down beat-em-up movies. We had to have action, we had to have humor. We'd show them to our family or our neighborhood friends, and, they'd laugh with us. But the older I got, I remember seeing how a good story would impact the audience. And that was my wake-up call, that God could say, Alex, I can use your desire to do this for my purposes and do more with it than you ever thought possible if you trust me with it. I prayed about it, and God gave me this idea for a plot called Flywheel. Flywheel was about a used car salesman who would live one way in front of his family and church friends, of course another way behind the scenes. And men began responding to the story of Flywheel, saying, that's me on the screen, that is me. Then before we knew it, Blockbuster Video had picked it up and put it in their stores nationwide, and I was excited. At the same time, I was overwhelmed. And our pastor Michael came back and said, this may be an open door that God has given us. We may need to pray about continuing this avenue for ministry. And that led us to our second movie, Facing the Giants. And I had no clue what was coming. God was about to teach us something hard and yet amazing. We felt a very strong sense that God was saying, deal with faith. Everybody has a giant fear, a sense of failure, struggling with inferiority, or some ball and chain in their own life. We ask the question, is God only worthy of being worshipped when He's good to you? Or is He worthy of being worshipped because He's God? I'm excited about this message. And then we go knock on several doors of distributors, hoping that somebody will pick it up and release it theatrically. No one was interested. They said, it's a nice story, not really our cup of tea, or not something we feel like would work well enough to invest for a theatrical release. So I was frustrated. And I said, God, I feel like you gave us this theme and this message. And you took us down this road, and we have poured our heart and soul into this. And we did this for you, and now it's sitting on a shelf. No one's interested. Why? God said to me, Alex, you made a movie that says that God is worth worshiping and serving whether you win or whether you lose. Will you do that with this film? So we surrendered it to God, and I died to a theatrical release. Soon after that, a music company calls us that we had asked permission to use a song in the film Facing the Giants. And they say to us, not only can you use this song, but our parent company is interested in releasing your movie theatrically. And we said, who's your parent company? And they said, Sony. It's the one door we had not knocked on. God opened a door we could not have opened. We didn't even knock on their door. And Facing the Giants was released in several hundred movie theaters in the fall of 2006. And it did better than any of us expected. The marketing budget was small. The number of theaters was so far less than any other Hollywood movie. But the response was incredible. And people were saying, this is my giant, that's my giant. God had done the same thing in my life. And watching him do it in so many other lives was so fulfilling. As the platform expanded for us to tell these stories, as more theaters jumped on board, as more ministries caught hold of what these movies could do for people, for some reason, the path got harder for us. My time with my wife and my children began to lessen and lessen and lessen. And that began to pull on my own identity. Who am I? What am I supposed to be doing here? And it would only get harder from there. As we continued praying, God impressed on us to make a film about a marriage totally surrendered to Him. God gave us this concept for what we called the love dare, about a husband whose marriage was failing, and so he wanted out, his wife wanted out. And the husband's dad, who had trusted God late in his life, comes to him and says, don't get divorced yet. I want you to hold off for 40 days before proceeding. And I want you to apply these principles to your life and how you treat your wife for 40 days. So we make this movie Fireproof. And my brother Stephen and I start praying through, should we write this book, The Love Dare, for real? And as we're working on this book, and we find a publisher for it, before it comes out, issues in my own marriage started to bubble up to the surface. Some insecurity in my wife and some of her frustration that because I was pouring so much of myself into something that was good, she felt in many ways neglected, put on the back burner. And she's saying, Alex, and I need you to continue pouring in and loving our marriage. I feel like you're pushing me away so you can do some good for other people. And I knew she loved me and I knew I loved her. But I was thinking, what is going on here? I'm writing a book and making a movie about how to have a godly marriage, and my own marriage is being stretched and pulled more than it ever had. So we agreed to go to counseling, marital counseling. And while we are in counseling, this book, The Love Dare, on how to have a good marriage is being released. So God, it's not that The Love Dare wasn't true and didn't work, because they are biblical principles. And I ended up doing it in my own marriage. But God stripped me down to the core and reminded me, just because I know some truth here doesn't mean that I've got it all figured out in my own heart. And that I needed Him as much as anybody. I had to cling to His grace and His truth as much as I ever had. After Fireproof, God, do you want us to make another film? And if so, what should it be about? And after praying, God directed us to fatherhood. I don't have to tell you what's going on with men in our culture. They're not stepping up the way they need to step up. And in some ways, I wasn't stepping up the way I needed to step up. It kind of freaked me out because I was thinking, God, why are you making me live out the movies that we're presenting? You did it in Giants, you did it in Fireproof, and it kind of unnerved me because in some ways I wasn't so sure I wanted to do another movie. God has a way of knocking the pride out of you. But He also has a way of using you. So, as long as He gives me the strength and the grace to tell another story, if He's there with me, I'll do it. My prayer is that Courageous grabs men by the throat and reaches into their hearts and sparks them to chase after God. We want to see God rock our culture with men stepping up. So I'll carry that torch. My brother Stephen will carry that torch if he helps me. I'm counting on it. My name is Alex Kendrick, and I am second.